What happens when the man who signs the check scrubs toilets with the night crew? Xavier Carter asked himself, pulling a blue janitor's shirt over his head in the back of a beat-up Ford Transit van. His face was hidden behind a thick beard and rectangular glasses. He wore a baseball cap low, and his voice had been trained to carry a slight southern drawl. No one at this location had seen him before. He'd bought the cleaning company 7 years ago when it had only 3 branches. Now it had 17 locations across the Midwest. This one, a large commercial cleaning crew outside Indianapolis, was his worst performer for the last 3 quarters. He'd tried everything: meetings with the district manager, phone calls with the store supervisor, training packets, nothing changed. So now he was here, undercover. It was common for new hires to join the night shift without ever meeting someone from corporate. People came and went a lot. Low pay, hard hours, little recognition. He knew that, which was why he'd raised wages over the past year. But this location still had high turnover, bad reviews, and missed contracts. He wanted to see it for himself. The van pulled into the back lot of a tall office building. The team had just finished a big job here last week, but the company complained the windows were still streaky, the bathrooms untouched. Xavier stepped out, clutching his lunchbox and a mop handle. Inside the break room, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and microwaved noodles. A woman in her late 20s was pouring coffee into a paper cup. She had tired eyes, but her uniform was crisp. Her name tag read, Leah. She glanced at him. "You the new guy?" she asked. "Yeah," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Name's Rick from Columbus." "Lee," she nodded. "Stick with me, don't count on much help from the others." Just then, the crew manager walked in. White guy, early 40s, with a gut that hung heavy over his belt and eyes that scanned the room like he couldn't wait to be somewhere else. "All right," he barked. "We got 5 floors tonight. Same crew. Rick, you're shadowing Lee, don't get in the way." He didn't even ask his last name. The shift started fast. Vacuuming, scrubbing, wiping fingerprints off glass panels. Xavier kept his head down, watching everything. Lee worked hard, real hard. She moved with purpose, showed him how to prep the mop water, how to dry the chrome handles so they shined. She double-checked every room. But something was off. On the 3rd floor, she quickly stepped into a bathroom after one of the other workers, a guy named Darren, walked out. She sighed, grabbed the toilet brush, and scrubbed the stalls again. Xavier followed her in. "I thought Darren already did this floor," he asked. She hesitated. He missed a few things. He looked at her, missed or skipped. She didn't answer, just kept scrubbing. By floor 5, it was clear. Darren was cutting corners. He'd disappear for long stretches, show back up leaning on a broom, but the floors he was assigned to, still dusty, trash half emptied. Xavier even found a used paper towel on a conference table. Lee cleaned it without a word. "You always clean up after him?" Xavier asked quietly as they dumped the trash. She hesitated, then gave a tired smile. "Someone's gotta do it. I'd rather fix it than fight with him all night." He nodded, that stuck with him. Later, in the loading dock, Darren lit a cigarette while the others hauled bags of trash outside. The manager didn't say a word, just scrolled on his phone. "Hey," Xavier asked Lee, "does no one report this stuff?" She shrugged, tried once, got told to focus on my own work. After that, just stopped saying anything. Xavier's jaw tightened. Back inside, Darren spilled mop water in the hallway and walked away. Lee grabbed a towel and cleaned it up. Xavier grabbed a second towel silently and helped her. "Thanks," she said, surprised. "No problem," he replied. She paused, then looked at him. "You're not like most new guys." "I just think, if someone cares enough to do it right, they shouldn't be the only one who cares." She smiled for real that time. You'd be surprised how rare that is. As the night ended, the manager signed their time cards and waved them off without a word. Darren was already gone. Lee wiped her hands and turned to Xavier. "You're all right, Rick. Hope you stick around." He nodded, feeling a knot in his stomach. "I'll be back tomorrow." In the parking lot, Xavier sat in the van, staring at the dark building. Lee was doing 2 jobs, Darren was doing none, and the manager, he didn't care either way. This wasn't just sloppiness. This was a culture problem, one where the people who tried were punished by silence and the people who didn't were ignored. Xavier looked at himself in the rearview mirror. He'd run a tight ship before, he knew how to fix things. But tonight, he realized sometimes you don't just need to fix policy. You need to fix the people steering the ship. And it started with one conversation. Tomorrow, he'd ask Leah a question he already knew the answer to. "You ever think about being a manager?" The second night started colder. There was frost on the loading ramp and a bite in the air that seeped through the seams of Xavier's janitor uniform. He arrived 10 minutes early and waited outside the staff entrance watching the crew trickle in. Lee arrived last, shuffling fast with a thermos tucked under her arm. "Didn't think you'd come back," she said, pulling her knit gloves off in quick jerks. "Didn't think I'd want to," Xavier replied, "but here I am." She gave a quiet laugh but didn't push the conversation. The manager, Kyle, as Xavier had picked up from a passing reference, showed up 2 minutes late with a half-finished energy drink and a face that looked like it hadn't seen sleep in days, but not for the right reasons. "Same floors, same teams," Kyle muttered, not even glancing up from his clipboard. "No extras tonight, just hit the checklist and get out." As they stepped onto the first floor, Lee passed Xavier a fresh pair of nitrile gloves. "You'll need these," she said. "Upstairs had a plumbing issue last night. Building crew didn't fix it." "What kind of issue?" he asked. "Overflowed toilet, 3rd stall, nobody touched it." She stopped walking. "Guess who has that floor again?" Xavier followed her to the elevator, holding the gloves in one hand. "That sort of thing happen a lot?" he asked. "Maintenance will sometimes ignore our reports. If it's not electrical or structural, they pass it back to us." He nodded, his mind already turning. That meant the client's internal teams were deflecting work. Not surprising, but it complicated things. He'd need to review the service contracts, see where the responsibilities blurred. On the 3rd floor, the smell hit before the doors fully opened. Lee didn't flinch. She just pulled a second mask from her pocket and handed it to him. "Try not to breathe through your nose." They spent 20 minutes in that bathroom. She disinfected the counters while Xavier scrubbed the floor around the stall. The toilet had overflowed again. No sign of a plumber, just a yellow caution cone and a soaked floor mat. "How are we supposed to clean this if no one's fixing the source?" he asked. She stood, one hand on her lower back. "Welcome to why we go through people so fast." He finished mopping and dumped the dirty water into the janitor's sink. The hallway outside was quiet, but he noticed Darren sitting on a window ledge, scrolling through something on his phone. No mop, no cart, just him and the glowing screen. "He's been up here for almost half an hour," Xavier said, nodding in Darren's direction. Lee didn't look. He always disappears after the 1st floor, shows up again when it's time to clock out. "You ever talk to Kyle about it?" "I did once, a few months ago. He said Darren's got seniority and to let it go." Xavier folded his arms. Seniority doesn't mean immunity. She gave a tired shrug. Try telling Kyle that. Their next stop was the executive offices on the top floor. Glass-walled conference rooms, wide desks with minimalist furniture, and everything in white or chrome. The kind of place where a smudge on a doorframe could be the difference between a contract renewal or a complaint. I usually take this floor last, Lee said. They're picky, even check the underside of chairs sometimes. Xavier raised an eyebrow. Seriously. Had a client once call about a fingerprint on the inside of a window. Said it made them look careless to investors. He examined the edge of a glass door, and you told Kyle. He told me to wipe it again and stop bringing him problems. Xavier bit down on a response. She moved past him to refill the paper towels and restock the under-sink supplies. He followed her quietly. By the time they reached the 5th floor, his back was stiff and his hands ached. He hadn't done physical labor like this in years, not since long before he'd bought the company. Still, it wasn't the pain that bothered him. It was the silence. The way everyone accepted that nothing would change. Back in the break room during their 10-minute pause, the crew sat in separate corners. No one spoke. A small radio played static-laced pop music in the background. Xavier sat across from Lee, peeling an orange slowly. You ever think about moving up? He asked, like running a shift or managing a crew. She looked up from her sandwich. Why? You know the job better than anyone here. You actually care if it gets done right. She frowned. That's not enough, at least not here. What do you mean? I've seen good people take supervisor roles. They last a few months, get burned out, then leave. The pay bumps small. The hours get worse. And Kyle doesn't back anyone up when there's a problem. Xavier leaned forward. What if someone did back you up? She studied him for a beat. You talk like someone who's not just passing through. He gave a half smile. Maybe I'm not. Just then, Kyle walked in. His eyes scanned the break room and landed on Xavier. You new guy, come with me. Xavier stood, tossing his gloves in the bin. Kyle led him down the hall and into a supply closet. You've been talking to Leah a lot, Kyle said, crossing his arms. She's showing me how things are done. That's fine, just remember some people around here like to exaggerate, makes them feel important. Xavier didn't respond. Kyle stepped closer. You want to last here, keep your head down, do your job. Don't start thinking you're here to fix anything. Xavier met his eyes, understood. The moment stretched, then Kyle stepped back and left without another word. Xavier waited until the footsteps faded, then returned to the 5th floor. Lee was restocking the utility cart. What did he want? She asked. Said to focus on the work. She gave a small nod and pushed the cart forward. They finished the shift in silence. At the back entrance, Lee pulled her coat tight and glanced at him. You're not like the others, she said, but I don't know what that means yet. He opened the door. Maybe it means change is overdue. She didn't answer, just walked into the dark. Xavier stayed behind, staring at the smudged windows. He was done watching. Tomorrow he'd bring someone from HR, quietly, no warning, and he wouldn't be Rick anymore. He'd be the one asking Kyle some real questions. For now, he had Lee's schedule in his pocket. And a plan forming. Xavier stood outside the building, just before dusk, leaning against the passenger door of a dark gray minivan that hadn't moved in over an hour. The side windows were tinted, and the man inside stared through them at the back entrance of the office tower. Her name's Lee Dorsey, Xavier said, his voice low. I want her contract reviewed, and quietly. No chatter back to her or the rest of the crew, you understand me. The man inside the van nodded, without looking away from his tablet. She's clean, he said. No complaints. No absences in the last 6 months, never late. Got 2 commendations filed last year by a former site manager. The guy left after 4 months, no reason given in the exit interview. Xavier exhaled through his nose. What about Kyle? He asked. The man paused, pulling up a second document. Kyle Renner, 5 years in, no HR violations, but we've had 3 contracts terminated under his oversight. All listed inconsistent quality as the reason. No follow-ups filed. And the guy Darren's. A third file came up. 6 write-ups, all labeled minor infractions, sloppy work, unexplained absences, 1 instance of leaving a shift early without notice. Kyle signed off everyone. Xavier's jaw shifted slightly. That's not minor, that's a pattern. The man nodded again. You want me to keep watching the site? No, I'm going in. He pulled the janitor's cap lower and zipped up the jacket. The cold wind scraped against his face, but his focus was elsewhere. Inside the building, everyone was already clocked in. The break room light flickered. Someone had stacked empty soda cans in the corner of the table. Xavier walked in and nodded at Lee, who was loading supplies into the cart without looking up. Elevators out tonight, Kyle announced from the hallway, his voice carrying just enough to sound annoyed. Someone get started on the stairwells, and I want the boardroom glass spotless. Last time we got flagged for streaks. He tossed a bottle of cleaner onto the table and walked off. Lee didn't flinch. She just grabbed the bottle and added it to her cart. Xavier stepped beside her and picked up the mop bucket. Want me on stairwells? He asked. You sure? Yeah, I've got legs. She nodded and handed him a key. 5th floor storage closet has the wide squeegee. Use that on the landing windows. It'll go faster. The stairwell was unheated. Each step felt colder than the last. As he worked, Xavier watched the building's rhythm unfold through the narrow stairwell, windows the janitor's cart wheels squeaking down polished hallways, the muffled sound of a vacuum, and the occasional slam of a supply closet door. At the 3rd floor landing, he heard 2 voices echoing from below. Darren and another cleaner, a younger guy named Lewis, were talking. Xavier stayed quiet and listened. I'm telling you, man, Darren said, just do what I do. Look busy, take a break when no one's watching. Kyle doesn't care. Lewis hesitated. But Lee keeps fixing your stuff. Doesn't that bother you? She wants to be a hero, let her. Get paid the same as her, and I don't break my back. Xavier stepped down 1 flight and rounded the corner. Darren's eyes widened slightly, just for a second, then he gave a casual nod. Yo, Rick, you lost. Nope, just finished floor 5, Xavier said. Saw the window on 3 was fogged. Thought I'd wipe it while I'm here. Lewis stepped back, avoiding the bucket. You need help. I'm good, Xavier said, not looking at Darren. As the 2 walked off, he heard Darren mutter something under his breath. By the time he returned to the 5th floor, his gloves were damp and his arms sore from stretching across the wide stairwell windows. Lee was on her knees, scrubbing the grout between restroom tiles with a handheld brush. Thought you were on glass duty, she said, not looking up. Got reassigned to stairwells. You volunteer or get volunteered. I didn't say no. She pushed the brush back into the bucket and stood slowly, stretching her back. We're short again tonight, she said. 2 people called out. Kyle hasn't reassigned their areas. Xavier leaned against the doorframe. You going to cover it? If I don't, it won't get done. He opened his mouth, but she cut him off. Don't, I know what you're going to say, and you're probably right, but you don't have to work here tomorrow. I do. She picked up the bucket and walked past him, her motion stiff but steady. 2 hours later, Xavier found Kyle in the loading dock, sitting on an overturned bucket, scrolling through something on his phone with one hand and eating a sandwich with the other. Xavier leaned against the wall. We short tonight. Kyle didn't look up. Yeah, it happens. You reassign the missing zones. Lee usually picks them up. She's fast, works better when I don't micromanage. Xavier folded his arms. You ever think maybe that's not her job? Kyle finally looked at him. What's your deal, Rick? You ask a lot of questions for a mop guy. Xavier stepped closer. And you give a lot of half answers for someone who's supposed to be running this place. Kyle stood, brushing crumbs off his coat. You think you know something. I know you've got one employee doing the work of 3, while another spends half the night hiding with a phone. I know 3 contracts have been lost under your watch. And I know you haven't filed a single corrective action in over a year. Kyle's expression darkened. Who are you? Xavier reached into his jacket and pulled out his ID. Xavier Carter, owner, Regional Cleaning Services. Kyle stared at the card, then at his face. You've been working here. For 3 nights, long enough. Kyle took a step back, his voice low. You set me up. No, Xavier said, you did that all by yourself. He turned and walked back toward the hallway. His boots echoed on the concrete. The next morning, the entire crew was called in at 7. Most of them looked confused. Some were yawning. Lee stood near the back, arms crossed, her eyes scanning the room. Xavier stepped forward. No disguise, no cap, no glasses. I'm Xavier Carter, he said. Own this company. A silence. For the past few days, I've been working alongside you. I've seen what you deal with. I've seen what gets ignored. And I've seen who's been holding this place together. He looked directly at Lee. Her face didn't change, but her hands slowly dropped to her sides. Kyle Renner has been placed on administrative leave, Xavier continued. Effective immediately, we'll be reviewing every contract he managed over the last year. Murmurs filled the room. As of today, Lee Dorsey is acting shift lead. She didn't apply, she didn't ask, but she earned it. Lee stepped forward slightly. A few of the crew nodded. One clapped once before stopping, unsure if it was appropriate. You'll all be getting a review of your assignments and responsibilities, Xavier said. No more guesswork, no more cleaning up after someone who's not doing their part. If you have a problem, someone will listen. And if you're doing the work, you'll be recognized for it. He paused, letting the silence settle. Then, if you're here to cut corners, this is your warning. But if you're here to do the job right, I've got your back. Starting now. He nodded once and stepped aside. Lee didn't say anything. She just looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. As the crew filed out, one by one, she stayed behind. You set this in motion before last night, didn't you? She asked. I had to see it for myself first. She looked down at the ID still in his hand. You could have just sent someone. I tried that. Reports don't tell you what a mop bucket does. She let out a breath. I didn't ask for this role. I know, but you've already been doing it. She gave a small nod. Then I guess I'll need a new key. You'll have it by lunch. As she walked off, he watched her blend into the crew not as a background player anymore, but as someone in charge. And for the first time in a while, Xavier didn't feel like he was running a company from a distance. He felt like he was building one, person by person. The following Monday, the tone changed, but not in the way most people expected. There were no balloons, no group applause, no dramatic speeches. Just a clipboard, a new schedule, and a job to do. Lee arrived 20 minutes early, her new badge clipped to her belt, her uniform pressed. She didn't linger in the break room like before. Instead, she made a quiet loop of the facility before shift start. She counted carts, checked supply closets, and noted which floors had extra foot traffic over the weekend. When the rest of the crew clocked in, she handed out assignments without raising her voice, but with a firmness that left no room for negotiation. Xavier was there too, not in uniform this time. He stood by the back stairwell, a black notebook in hand, watching. What's with the clipboard? Lewis asked as Lee passed him a revised checklist. I'm tracking task completion, Lee said. Not to catch anyone, just to see how long each area takes. I'm not guessing anymore. Louis nodded and walked off without complaint. By 8:30, the team was in motion. The second floor had been reassigned to Louis, and a new part-time hire named Rochelle, someone from a neighboring site who agreed to pick up 2 shifts a week. Darren, surprisingly, was still on the roster, but he wasn't leaning on any broom tonight. Lee had given him the largest floor, the one with the most public spaces. She hadn't said anything sharp. She didn't have to. "Let me know if you need clarification on anything," she told him, handing him the layout printout. "I'll be checking in at the halfway mark." Darren had taken the sheet without a word. No eye roll, no protest, just a long glance at Xavier, who remained near the back of the room taking notes. By the time the 3rd hour hit, something unfamiliar crept into the building. Rhythm. Carts moved at a steady pace. Supplies stayed stocked. The radio in the break room was off. No one lingered behind. And where there used to be silence, there were short, functional exchanges. "Vacuum's out on 4, swapping it with the one on 2. Trash bags are low, I logged it on the clipboard. Floor buffer needs maintenance, tagged it, left it in the closet." Xavier walked the building alone, floor by floor. He didn't speak, didn't interfere. He stopped once at the 3rd floor restroom and checked the grout. It had been scrubbed again. The chrome shined. He could see his reflection in the faucet. He moved on. By the end of the shift, Lee stood at the back dock with the clipboard tucked under her arm. Darren walked past her, glanced sideways, then paused. "You going to log how long it took me to finish?" he asked. "I already did." He stuffed his hands in his pockets. "I can move faster next time." "I didn't say it was too slow." He looked down, then nodded once before heading to the time clock. Xavier approached from the side. "Didn't expect him to respond that way," he said. "I didn't either," Lee replied, "but I didn't give him any cover to hide behind. No Kyle, no excuses, just the job." "You think he'll keep showing up?" "I think he wants to prove something now." Xavier looked at the crew as they filed out. No one lingered. No one looked frustrated. Just tired, in the way people are after a real day's work. "You ever think about why you stayed here?" he asked. Lee tilted her head. "I did. A lot. I think I stayed because quitting would have felt like letting people like Kyle win." He nodded slowly. "That's not why most people stay." "I'm not most people." He smiled faintly, then gestured to the clipboard. "Any gaps tonight?" "2 things. 1, buffer's down, needs a new belt. 2, we need a backup for Rochelle's floor by Thursday. She's got school finals. I'll have someone from the central team rotate in this week, and I'll authorize a new buffer." She nodded once. "Thanks." He looked at her. "You know, I didn't come down here just to clean floors. I came to find out why we kept losing contracts at this site. I thought it was laziness, maybe bad hires, but it wasn't." "It was leadership," she said. He didn't need to confirm it. The next morning, he sat at his office desk, no longer behind closed doors, but in a shared space just off the operations floor. He'd moved his workstation temporarily, something he hadn't done in years. Not to micromanage, he hated that, but to stay visible. Present. He called the HR lead and authorized a restructuring of the site management policy. From now on, every site would need an assigned quality lead, someone from within the crew, chosen based on peer recommendations and performance, not tenure, not titles. Each would report directly to a regional supervisor, bypassing any layers that allowed problems to sit and rot. He also requested a full equipment audit across all sites. 3 days later, the regional manager visited unannounced and walked the Indianapolis site with a clipboard of his own. Lee didn't flinch. She walked him through the storage rooms, the checklists, and showed him the tagged buffer unit. She explained the rotation plan for part-time staff. She even flagged a drafty window on the fourth floor that caused condensation to gather near the baseboards. The regional manager sent an email that night. Most organized shift lead have seen in 6 months. This site's going to turn around. 2 weeks later, the client who had nearly terminated the contract called to commend the improvements. They re-upped for another year. Xavier didn't celebrate with a press release or a bonus announcement. He sent one message to Leah through official channels. "Keep doing it your way, we're watching." She didn't respond, but he didn't need her to. He visited the site again quietly a month later. This time not in disguise, not with a clipboard, just to observe. Lewis was training a new hire. Darren was running the floor scrubber and keeping pace. The break room had been cleaned out, no soda cans, no flickering light. Leah was reviewing the task log with a folded map of the building spread beside her. As Xavier walked past, she looked up, nodded once, then went back to work. That was all he needed. Leadership didn't always come with titles. Sometimes it started with a mop and a decision not to cut corners. And sometimes, the best way to fix a company wasn't to fire people from the top, it was to find the ones already leading from the floor and give them the room to do it right.